Hi everyone, it's Katie and welcome to day 8 of 31 Days of Tarot Challenge. Today our prompt is our most worked deck in 2016, so the deck that we used the most. Now I'm going to do a top 5 because I really feel like I did use quite a lot of decks this year and top 5 is hard enough already. I think as you'd expect there are a few crossovers from my favourite tarot decks of 2016, but these are the decks that I just used all the time. I think these are the decks that I just kept going back to, especially for readings for others. So the first deck I'm going to show you, although these are in no order, is the Fountain Tarot. This is just such a beautiful, clear deck, and I get people requesting for me to read with this deck quite often. I don't get a lot of requests for which deck to use when people buy readings from me, and I don't tend to encourage that because I do like to be fairly intuitive when I choose what deck to use. But I'm totally okay when it's the Fountain Tarot that people want me to use, because it's just like this deck works for any reading, anytime, anywhere. You know, some decks I feel like work better for certain readings, or if I'm in a certain headspace or a certain time of the year, phase of the moon, whatever it is. No, this deck is perfect for any time. I think Kelly from The Truth and Story says that this is basically her rider-waite. And I totally see why. I still love the rider-waite. And I don't feel like this replaces the rider-waite for me, perhaps like she does. She feels that way, I think. But it certainly is, I think this, the Hughes Tarot and the rider-waite are kind of those neutral decks that will just work all the time. Speaking of the rider-waite, I think this is the Centennial edition. I don't know if this was my most used edition, probably. It's probably up there. But overall, the rider-waite-smith deck I use a lot. I mean, it's just an old faithful, a reliable deck. And if I'm doing readings for people in person, like friends or family, they'll often want this deck because it's, you know, what they know, the imagery that they see in the movies. But it's just such a great deck to read with. I don't know, I love the rider-waite. I think it's beautiful. I really enjoy reading with it, and that's probably why I have several copies of different editions. The next would be the Circo Tarot. I use this deck so much. I did only get it in like September, I think, but in the 3 or 4 months that I've had it, I've used it so much. Like readings for others, readings for myself, just all the time. It is very rider-waite, but it's super colourful, super fun, a little bit quirky, and a little bit different, some of the cards. It's really, really easy to read with. Some of these more fun decks, I worry sometimes that they're not going to be super great to read with. And I have found that with a couple that I love the imagery with, but I just didn't really enjoy reading. This deck, I love the imagery and it's so great to read with. And people tend to really like it when I send them a photo and I've just read with this deck for them. I think it's just a really appealing deck. The colours are beautiful, and it's different enough to be quirky, but it's still the sort of imagery for the most part that we're used to seeing. Next would be the Fantastic Menagerie. I use this deck so much. I really do think if I had to pick 2 decks that I used the most, it would be this and the rider-waite. But I thought that was a bit boring, seeing as everyone knows the rider-waite and I've already shown this deck like 3 times in the last month. So we had to make it the top 5. But this deck is so much fun. Like I've already said, it's traditional in its meaning but quite different in its depiction. And because this deck has a dark sense of humour, it often brings up some not so nice stuff, but it does it in a light-hearted sort of way. I don't know, it's just such a brilliant deck. I really wasn't expecting to love this deck quite as much as I do. Now for 5th spot, there was kind of 3 decks competing. The Hughes Tarot, the Spiral Tarot, but I decided in the end to go with the anak. I did use this deck so often. I love reading for myself with this deck. I use this deck a lot for readings for others, but the reason that I chose it over those other 2 decks is because this is a deck I use a lot for other activities. In one of my videos for the Therapeutic Tarot, and I kind of explained how sometimes I use the progression of the suits to better understand where I'm at emotionally and in terms of my thought process. This is a deck that I use for stuff like that, just because it is so storybook, you know, pictures. So this is a deck I use a lot for readings, but the reason it's included in here is because I also use it so often for other things. So these are the 5 tarot decks that I think I used the most in 2016. These were just like those reliable, steady decks that I could reach for readings for myself, readings for others, and in the case of the anak, other activities that we can use tarot for. So that is day 8 done. I'll see you all again tomorrow for day 9, and until then, much love. Bye.